Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we're checking out my Mushihimesama 1.5 1cc. This is from early December 2021, and this is another one. Now that I'm kind of going, here's the thing. Because I'm still deep into Rolling Gunner, and I have not been touching any new games or anything like that, I figured, you know what, I might as well just revisit some of the other clears that I have done in the past, which I never commentated. So this is certainly an incredible game, and I really did want to come back to this one specifically and share just a bit about the experience and my thoughts and whatnot. So that's why we're doing this one. I actually don't have my original 1cc, like the normal, like the version 1.5. I forget what it's called, original or normal or something. I just never jumped into that. I think there was just something about the music in version 1.5 that I zeroed in on when I first started thinking about tackling a clear in this game. The Switch version, that is. But I absolutely love it. I love playing S-Power. All the shot types are great, but there's just something about, I think generally speaking, I just love shot types that are more concentrated firepower, like on a specific trajectory. And because I love being able to just be efficient, and I think with that, I just like the feeling of speed killing big threats sooner rather than later. And as much as I do enjoy spread shots and things like that, there's just something that really feels satisfying about S-Power in this game. So anyway, this is, if I didn't say it already, this is the first clear that I ever had in this, so it's been a long time since I probably watched over this myself, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot of really silly fumbles and just even maybe some panic bombs and that sort of thing, especially during the end boss. But I remember specifically in and around the time that I first started tackling this, I remember checking out Desmond's streams and just chatting with him about the game and things like that, and just being really excited at the time just to jump into this. It had just hit Switch, and I had banged out my novice mode clear that didn't take me too long, but it still threw enough at me that it required like a bit of a learning phase, of course. And yeah, there was just something about the difficulty in this, even though I'm not sure how I would view it now, like if I was to jump into it, how a run would go, because I've just experienced and grown, I feel anyway, like to such a degree since doing this one. But at the time, this was definitely a challenge. I remember stage 3, for instance, that took some figuring out. I think a lot of people, like most people, struggle with that stage in particular, because it's just a non-stop wild time. Like that's all I can really say about it. But yeah, there's just something really, really awesome about this game. Like, every stage feels different. Every stage feels really intuitive when you kind of put yourself into the rhythm of it. And I'm not sure if we're ever going to see Futari hit Switch, but that is just a game that I think about every so often, and I'm just very excited at the idea that maybe someday we will get that, because I love this game, and from what I've seen of Futari, I would just love to be jumping into that. But anyway, some really cool bosses in this game, of course. The arrange mode is actually a fantastic mode. I've dabbled a little bit. I wouldn't say I've jumped in for seriously dedicating myself to a clear. I've kind of just sampled things a little bit, here and there, just like a few times, maybe 2 times or something. I wouldn't mind doing that. The music is great. The visuals, like the different attack patterns and things like that, I really enjoy. So I do want to bang that one out. Because it has been such a long time since I did this clear, I'm not really going to focus so much on the run itself, because I don't really recall what happens and all that kind of stuff. So I might just be all over the place this episode, and I trust that's okay. So yeah, anyway, I think one stage I will talk about, though, is this stage 3. Just, holy smokes, like, it's easy to kind of when you're new to it anyway, and you're not used to this style of game, it's easy to kind of wrap your mind around the first 2 stages, but there's something about stage 3 that really just steps things up a notch, and that's when you realize, okay, holy smokes, I've got to actually figure things out to such a fine degree in this level. And I think when I realized that there was an extend, that like the hidden extend, that made a huge difference when I started grabbing that. And I was actually just talking to someone yesterday, or at least the time of this recording, yesterday evening, about that, because they just recently tackled they banged out their novice mode clear, which is awesome, and they are already well on their way to polishing this off. And I think what's really cool is you can sometimes know about something, but you don't necessarily know how to pull it off, or sometimes you do, but pulling it off can be a tricky thing. And I feel like that was the case for me when I was playing this, getting that extend, I mean. Because ideally, the idea can be tempting to not have to use bombs just to get a life. Like, if it's taking, let's say, 1, 2 bombs, whatever, it's like, yeah, sure, that's not the greatest. You'd probably rather keep that for bigger threats later in the game. But at the same time, you gotta remember that, like, the bombs, yeah, they're important, but the life is more important. The amount of bombs you get with that life outweighs using 1 or 2 just to get it. So yeah, but there's just something really magical about this stage. I'm kind of just mesmerized watching this. I remember thinking to myself, like, oh man, these slow down moments are so cool, because like I can just do all this precise weaving in and out, and it's just such a blast. Like, some of these really high threat, medium-sized enemies that just kind of come in, and you know they have this big nasty spray, but there's so much going on anyway that everything's just slow, and you can kind of just work with the situation 1 or 2 seconds at a time, if you haven't fully learned or memorized or whatever. And another thing that I was talking about with this person yesterday, I'm not sure if they would want me to be saying who they are, so I'm just not going to bother right now, but we were talking about how the patterns can look very intimidating in this game, but most of the time it's just a matter of 1 or 2 little dodges or very minimal movement to deal with the entirety of an attack pattern that a medium-sized boss or something large will throw your way. So for anyone who has either never jumped into Mushihimesama, or they're considering it, or they have some experience with, let's say, novice mode, and they feel like this next step up in difficulty is just way, way too extreme, I would say give it a chance. Just jump into it. Kind of ensure that you don't just flail around, because it's easy to see big threats, like big stuff coming at you, and you would just want to jump all over the place. But if you kind of just keep it in mind that you don't have to move around so much, and you can just experiment with the smaller movements and just micro adjustments here and there, you might surprise yourself with what attack patterns you actually do make it through. And if you can kind of just see examples of that, that can certainly contribute to your confidence in what you then intentionally choose to confront on a more regular basis. I think that's how I will word that. Because I think if we don't do our part as a player to kind of dissolve the illusions and the things like the apprehension and the things that we are generating, but they're not really based on how insane something actually is, then we're always going to like be probably resorting to our resources for things we don't need to, or we're going to just make certain actions we don't need to make. And a huge part of improving is kind of just overcoming things like that during this journey, so that you can actually see what you're capable of, see what the truth of a situation is, and just deal with it much more realistically. It's so wild how memories work. Like I remember talking to Desmond, like this was another bit of a struggle stage with the big long enemies. I'm not sure what they kind of look like dragonflies, but they're not. They're just like these long things with... Yeah, and that whole part was definitely something to get used to. And I remember watching, I think Desmond stream that part, or we at least talked about it at one point. And it's just so cool how seeing, not that we're even there yet, but just seeing this stage, being here, just brings those memories back, the fond moments in stream or whatnot. But yeah, this is another prime example. The game looks like it's throwing a lot at you, but most of the time the threats aren't really a big deal. Like, certainly some of the enemies are. You gotta pay attention. I'm not saying like, oh, this stage is easy, like you don't have to do anything to make it through this. You obviously do. But for the most part, there is quite a bit of kind of just, yeah, going back and forth, like just swaying back and forth gently, and then making it through stuff like this, where it just takes some learning, and then it starts to go much better. I do someday want to do my Maniac clear. I sometimes jump in and just kind of like fiddle around, but I wouldn't say I have felt compelled at all to actually devote myself. There's just kind of something that's... I don't feel that... Yeah, it's a question of feeling like it's too big of a task. I don't think that's it at all. I think I just don't feel in the mood for... Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, just... this particular game. I think it's as simple as that. Like, I'm just so preoccupied with other games, other experiences, and things like that. So I just haven't really felt drawn to continue with this in any sort of serious way anyway. But I love this music. I cannot get enough of this. One of my favorite songs in this whole game is the Stage 5, which we'll be hearing very soon. Specifically on version 1.5. There's something so energetic about it that when I'm playing and you're just going along, let's say you haven't even made it to Stage 5 yet, but you love a song so much, you just want to do everything in your power to ensure that you survive and make it to that stage just so you can hear it. And then when you're hearing it, you're just fueled to just play well enough to just stay in it and just use the music as momentum, use it as a force to just keep pushing. This is a really cool boss. I love how imaginative this game is. I'm just kind of lost in my thoughts as I'm watching this. Hence the silence, but I didn't even need to bomb there. Like, what was that all about? I probably just thought something more crazy was about to happen, or who knows what. I don't think I actually had too many clears under my belt at this point. Because even though, like, I've been playing shmups since, yeah, halfway through 2018, I wasn't, and I've talked about this before in other videos, I wasn't even aware that 1cc's existed. I had no idea what that was. And so initially my experience with shmups was just like, okay, cool, like, just play them and just see what happens sort of thing. And then some years later, not too many of course, but yeah, I realized what that was, and then that's kind of when my actual journey of more serious playing started. Man, this game is such an action-packed ride. It is such a blast. I just love... And, oh yeah, by the way, I think this was before they patched the sound. Because I think at the time this was the, like, 100% original release without any sort of, like, tweaks or anything. But I think there was some major sound issues that were just messed up, which they eventually patched. I'm not sure when that was. It might have been a year or two ago now, but... Or maybe a year and a half, I'm not sure. But yeah, I do love just being able to net those bullet cancels. That in conjunction with the slow motion in this stage is just so fantastic. And what's wild too is it's not even a very long run. Of course, if you're playing a mode where you have the TLB triggering and whatnot, then that's going to add some time, of course. But for the most part, it's pretty short. And yet it just manages to balance the action and the bullet density and everything just so beautifully. But I love this song. I cannot get over it. Goodbye. But what's interesting to me is just remember, like, it's like this for any game you ever play where you have not yet cleared it. And when you start getting close, you just know, like, oh man, it's going to be one of these days. But because you've never done it yet, there's still that sense of... I'm not sure how to word it really, but there's still something in you that is kind of just doubtful or doesn't have the confidence, because when you have actually cleared it, the way in which, or at least the way in which I start to view the game, or a game when I've cleared it, is very different. For instance, when I cleared Rolling Gunner on original difficulty and then started putting weeks into expert mode, which I'm still in now, I felt like, man, if I was to go back to original mode, I could probably clear it every single time. Like, and I get, like, that may or may not be how runs actually go, but I just mean because you've plunged yourself into something even more extreme, you just suddenly feel like, oh my god, like, anything else would just feel like you can stay on top of it no matter what. And it's just interesting to observe that kind of thought popping up for games. And in ways, yeah, like, it's not that there isn't any truth to that either, because the sheer amount of experience and learning that you've then done is just, yeah, off the charts. Like, oh man. So here we are, final boss. So yeah, judging by, I definitely would say that, like, if I was to jump into this mode again these days and go for a clear, I would not be getting to this boss with so few resources. Like I have very little to work with right now. Holy, no bombs, 1 life after this one, and then I think I get 3 bombs with that. So you can definitely tell this was a first clear with very little in the way of me being efficient, being effective with things. Like every little hit. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a really crazy part where like if I didn't make it through, we're coming up to it I think, if I didn't make it through, the run would have been over. And for me at the time, I was like, oh my god, thank you. Or maybe it was even just a few of those instances where it's like, okay, please just let me get through this. Yeah, this string of bullets. Oh, man. But yeah, that's that. Anyway, the video is about to end, so thank you so much for checking this out. Have an awesome day. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.